And I had worries in my head that are our listeners going to be outraged by that change and unhappy with us?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but we'll see. Well, give us a comment. Let us know what you think.
Welcome to the Laughing Mystics, an unorthodox journey through the liturgical year with Laura Lewis Barr and Marcy Maderi.
All right. Well, welcome. Welcome, good listeners.
Hi.
Nice to be with you, Laura. So today we are having the Feast of Christ the King, and I have to shout out to my sweet and beautiful daughter because she was baptized on the Feast of Christ the King. It's, king obviously is a masculine word, but that idea of royalty, and she certainly does carry some beautiful
Regal. She's
regal.
very regal.
Yes, that empowered energy.
Yeah.
Which I've always loved about her. And she was born that way. She just kind of came out of the womb knowing what she was about and how things needed to happen. Love you. Love you, honey. Okay.
Today's question is, based on the readings, who is someone living that I admire that I would elect as king in my world?
Oh, well, we just talked about that. That's easy. It'd be my daughter.
So if and this is a cool thought experiment as I was making this thought experiment. So you would feel that Rachel would make a queen that you would feel good about being subject to.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because she has all this wisdom and she, looks out for people because she questions. She's not arrogant. She has self-reflection and she can make decisions. She can see the picture and just kind of cut through it. I think, growing up, both my son and I, we're like, okay, what does Rachel think? Even just recently, Joseph said, well, did you tell Rachel about this? What did she say? So
you already looked to her for leadership.
Oh, yes. Yes. She was baptized on this feast day. She's got that gift.
Wow. Okay.
I trust her to make decisions that are good for the whole and not just for herself.
That's a really great definition of a good king. And we've talked in the past here about how much influence the king or queen has on, if we had such people today, and I guess presidents and others are that now for us, but how much impact they have on daily life. So the idea of choosing the king, for me, the person who came into my head, and I don't know if he would want to be king, is the mythologist Michael Meade, whose podcast that I've mentioned a few times, and he's just so wise, and so there are other people I think that I admire for their wisdom, but he just has a pretty prophetic presence, and he was a conscious objector during Vietnam, and they put him in prison in solitary for a really long time.
Wow.
And he was like 19. And the guards would come to him for guidance.
Wow.
And he was in
amazing.
and he was in solitary for a long time, so long that he started to have visionary experiences. And there's so many cool stories about Michael Meade. So shout out to you, Michael. I so appreciate you and your work, and I'd be happy if you were king. I'm sure he would say no way.
Right. Well, and probably my daughter as well. She'd be like, "Don't make me do that. I don't want that."
Heavy weighs the crown.
Right. Right. And I think that is a good criteria for
Exactly.
someone who would be good in that kind of leadership
Exactly.
is someone who isn't jumping at it.
It's so true.
Yeah.
The first reading is from 2 Samuel. In those days, all the tribes of Israel came to David in Hebron and said, "Here we are, your bone and your flesh. In days past, when Saul was our king, it was you who led the Israelites out and brought them back. And the Lord said to you, 'You shall shepherd my people Israel, and shall be commander of Israel.' When all the elders of Israel came to David in Hebron, King David made an agreement with them there before the Lord, and they anointed him king of Israel."
So significant because, like in the lineage in the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew, it's very clear that Jesus is connected to David,
Yeah.
right? That's so we see that connection of being anointed. And I know I have friends who really struggle with this feast day because it's so much and puts Jesus in such a medieval guy on the horse with the crown kind of image.
Sure.
And I respect that. For me, it's about Christ being in charge, and being the real ruler, and not in a punitive way, but like the one who's actually in charge. Kind of when we talked about last week with from Malachi and everything burning to the ground, that regardless of what happens on this earth, my faith tells me that Christ is in charge, and that gives me comfort, and I can trust and rely on Christ.
Yeah. The king is an archetype that lives, I think,
Mm-hmm.
in our psyches.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may not be politically correct, but it lives there. And the king, the one who rules our psyche or our culture, is vital. And it's vital to have a good king. And so Christ as king, well, I also want to say that because it's archetypal, it's existed in myths and fairy tales forever. And
Mm-hmm.
so linking that together in tribes, and I think I learned this from Joseph Campbell, prehistoric tribes, early history of tribal peoples, the king was associated with fertility.
Mm.
And I remember a story Campbell told where the king might have been made king for just that year, just that season. And then the king is killed. Yeah, not so
Oops.
cool to be the king in that vibe, but
No.
the king knows that's coming too. And the king is killed for a renewal of the world, for a renewal of the season, the cycle, the fertility, and human sacrifice was part of the world then. But this idea, and this is in fairy tales a lot, the sick king, the Grail king who is sick, is part of a Christian story in King Arthur's stories. This idea of the king needing to be sacrificed, and Christ certainly is in with that, and the king's health being related to the health of the land and the culture. So I love this, and I've been in the past afraid to make these analogies because some people maybe don't like them. They're maybe can be a little threatening to hear that the symbols that we look to in Christianity have existed before. But I was recently reading Campbell talking about this, and he taught mythology anyway, Campbell taught for 40 years at a small women's college. And he said that when his students encountered themes and imagery from other cultures that was in their own religious tradition, it enlivened their faith because it pulled them to the psychological mythic reality of the symbol. And that's been true of me, and I hope it can be true of other people that hear me talk about it this way.
Well, and for me, like knowing, right, the long archetypal understanding of kings does not change what I said before
No.
of my faith and belief that Christ is in charge.
No, doesn't.
Right? It just, like as you said, it adds to it. And that actually is kind of a Christian thing, is to take what is and turn it just a little bit. So Jesus is involved in it. So God's involved in it. Jesuits were great at that when they were out missionaries, and they would notice and see what the people were doing, and then they would take that and say, okay, let's expand on the meaning of this so there's room for Jesus. So it's definitely in our tradition,
Yeah,
to do just what you're doing.
yeah,
And I think it just adds that other layer of richness to it for me.
I so agree. And so that we're not having to start from scratch all the time, and that we're dipping into what is very powerful already in our psyche.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Lawrence is where he taught.
Okay, thank you. So with the reading, I appreciate, that the Lord said, "You shall shepherd my people Israel and be the commander of Israel." Right, that shepherd, because that takes me to the Gospel of John, where Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd."
Yeah.
And being a shepherd is not a glamorous gig. It's smelly, and you're following these smelly animals around, and you're living outside, really. And so exposed to the elements, but super attentive to the flock and protecting them and caring for them. And so this is in the context of David, and David was a shepherd as the youngest brother. He was out in the fields, and that lovely connection to Jesus.
Yeah. And I love what the tribes say. Here we are, your bone and your flesh.
Mm-hmm.
That which is eternal, and that which is of the day and passing away. It's a cool phrase.
And as you said before, the health of the king is a reflection of, or the health of the tribe, the people, is a reflection of the health of the king.
Exactly. And they suffered under Saul,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have
Mm-hmm.
come out the other side. And last week you talked about the end and the means and Aquinas, and I think about David and the way he managed Saul so
Mm-hmm.
compassionately.
Yes.
He didn't have to, but he did, and that really helped Israel. That really helped the tribes, that
Mm-hmm.
he didn't take advantage of Saul's madness, but tried to mitigate it and work around it, work through it.
And that he didn't lose his humanity as he encountered Saul. David remained a person of integrity and strength, even as with his interaction with Saul.
I love that, and I think that is our calling today,
Mm-hmm.
right? As we deal with dysfunction, to not lose our humanity, because then we become part of the problem too.
Yes, for sure. This also makes me think, or listening to you makes me think of Donna Markham. She's a Dominican sister and does a lot on leadership. and she wrote that the people take on the pathology of the leader, that if I'm in leadership, if any of us are in leadership, we have to really be sure to do our own inner work, because our pathology, our broken spots, get transferred to the organization, to the people.
Wow. So, because of our world today and my desire to understand it, I have been researching Christian nationalism, and I've been listening to an amazing podcast called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill.
Hmm.
Mars Hill was a megachurch in Seattle, I think in the 2000s. And the story seems to concern a charismatic leader of that church, in some similarities with Bill Hybels from Willow Creek.
Okay.
And so far, I'm sort of early into the podcast, which is produced by Christianity Today, and they are trying to look at when leaders go off the rails in church, and this sort of adulation of the celebrity who's kind of given free rein, doesn't have an organization holding him in. It's always a man, so I'll say him. And it just reminds me of what you're saying, and that all of this adoration and no guardrails, it takes a really special person not to get corrupted by that and keep working on themselves. That power drive, Jesus was tempted by that too. And this podcast, I hate to talk about other podcasts and send you away, but he's the host is really trying to get at not just what happened with this leader, but all of us, all of those people who followed this leader and allowed the culture to happen. And he has a new book that's making connections, I think, more to today and what's happening.
Fascinating. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
It also makes me think of The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah. Say more.
Right? Because Frodo has this ring, this ring of power, and how power has this terrible ability to corrupt. And even Frodo, who has such a good heart and can carry it for a long time, is corrupted by it. And he needs Sam, his friend Sam, for accountability and for companionship, to bear that burden of power, which does corrupt. And the need for accountability. Every person needs accountability.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm hearing with some of that leadership structure in those churches. There was no accountability.
And sometimes there's leadership structures that don't hold people accountable. And in the Catholic Church, we've gone through that. So it's not always a structural thing, but yeah, it's this idea of, and maybe we all have our places where we have some power and we can look at how we use it, not just look at these people that are celebrities or political people. Sobering.
It is. It is sobering. Something to pay attention to.
Both in myself as a follower and in myself as a leader.
All right. This is a letter to the Colossians. Sisters and brothers, let us give thanks to the Father God, who, this is all Father, isn't it? I'm just going to have to go with it. There's too many he's.
Okay.
All right, before I read this second reading to the Colossians, I'd like to acknowledge that this is all talking about God in male language, and it's a little too complicated for me to untangle at this moment.
You had told this great story before about a service that Earl had gone to, and somebody read everything. And so I would like you or I to try to read it with all feminine because I think it could be profound for the listener to hear.
All right. I love that idea.
Okay.
I'll give it a go.
Okay.
Brothers and sisters, let us give thanks to the Mother who has made you fit to share in the inheritance of the holy ones in light. She delivered us from the power of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of her beloved Son, in whom we have redemption for the forgiveness of sins. She is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, for in her were created all things in heaven and on earth, the visible and the invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through her and for her. She is before all things, and in her all things hold together. She is the head of the body, the church. She is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, in that all things she herself might be preeminent. For in her all the fullness was pleased to dwell, and through her to reconcile all things for her, by making peace by the blood of her cross, through her, whether those on earth or those in heaven.
Wow.
How did that feel when I read that?
I just felt like I was thinking about Sophia
Mm-hmm.
and the feminine image of God. And I find it really powerful and wonderful. And I think I forget how powerful and wonderful it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worries in my head that are our listeners going to be outraged by that change and unhappy with us?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But we'll see. Well, give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Personally, I really like the beginning, to give thanks to the Mother, for her beloved child in whom we have redemption. Somehow or another, that feels different to me.
Yeah.
Right? I get that sense of womb. I get the sense of being held in a different way, of nursing, of like giving of the body as a mother gives her body literally for her child
Yeah.
in a different way. I mean, if fathers are wonderful, and I don't want to take anything away from that, but it's a different kind of relationship, or it's a different kind of role, at least in this society, not in all societies,
Yeah.
and not in all families.
So I have had the privilege to go to some very ancient places. And there was a place in Greece that we went to that had artifacts from the Bronze Age.
Mm.
And they had some of the oldest images of the goddess.
Oh.
And so I know these are kind of famous images of a woman's torso. Sometimes it's just the torso with large breasts and a large belly. And Marion Woodman, the Jungian analyst who is passed, but she wrote a lot about psychology of perfectionism, psychology of illness. And I just posted a quote of hers where she says, unless we come to acknowledge the goddess, we will not have a right relationship with our own bodies.
Fascinating.
And yeah, she was really working a lot with body, with the psychological dimensions of illness, but I think it's easy to lose track of the power of these archetypal images, themes that run so, so, so deep. And when you read that, just getting in touch with that feminine energy that some part of me knows.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
don't even know what I know about it. There's just a feeling.
Elizabeth Johnson has written a really amazing book, She Who Is, where Elizabeth Johnson, looks at those three parts of the Trinity and considers the femininity of each one.
Oh, wow.
Right, including Christ, Sophia. So if you listeners are curious or want to read some more, check it out. It's a really impactful book. She has written it many years ago now.
Repeat it for me, please.
She Who Is.
So I'm wondering if this was a song. In my lectionary, there are these dashes, not dashes, there are these slash marks between the phrases as if it is being portioned out for a recitation or a singing.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's got such great rhythm.
Yeah, it's a very mythic kind of poem that I'm not going to try to get intellectual with. It just sort of pours over me as a mystery, and it is the mystery of the higher self. It is the mystery of the objective psyche. It is the mystery of the mandala. He's repeating images of wholeness.
Right. And I like that, the firstborn of all creation, the firstborn from the dead, and through Christ, all the fullness was pleased to dwell. So like that mandala, that wholeness image, making peace through the blood of the cross for all people, for all time.
Yeah, we're being connected to this wholeness way, way, way beyond my little self. Yeah.
Right. It makes me kind of feel like one grain of sand on those beautiful mandalas. Are they?
Yeah. Tibetan monks?
Tibetan monks, right. The Tibetan monks make those amazing colored sand mandalas. I feel like one grain of sand in this beautiful mandala.
Yeah. And it reminds me of being in Taizé, a service where I don't have to understand it. I just am going to lose myself in the rhythm, in the mysterious song.
To let myself be swept away.
Yeah, to move out of the head. It just seems so important right now. A reading from the Gospel according to Luke. The rulers sneered at Jesus and said, "He saved others, let him save himself if he is the chosen one, the Christ of God." Even the soldiers jeered at him. As they approached to offer him wine, they called out, "If you are King of the Jews, save yourself." Above him there was an inscription that read, "This is the King of the Jews."
Now one of the criminals there reviled Jesus, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." The other, however, rebuking him, said in reply, "Have you no fear of God? For you are subject to the same condemnation. And indeed, we have been condemned justly, for the sentence we received corresponds with our crimes. But this one has done nothing criminal." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you have come into your kingdom." Jesus replied to him, "Amen, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise."
It's an interesting reading. Here's my question for you. So the first paragraph ends with, the inscription reads, "This is the King of the Jews." And that's our theme. And then we go into the story of the two criminals. Why? Why is that story added? We could have just said, Jesus as King is on the cross. And we can think about what that is, and that's sort of the story. But we veer off into this other story.
Well, for me, it's that choice that I have. Which one will I be? Which criminal will I be? Will I be demanding and self-righteous? Or will I humble myself, acknowledge my fault, acknowledge what I've done wrong, and ask for mercy?
Okay.
And that Jesus in that second part is in control. Jesus is on the cross dying and yet is in control. Jesus says, "You will be with me this day in paradise." Like what's happening to Jesus's body at the moment seems secondary. Like Jesus is still the king, even on the cross, making decisions, getting stuff done.
Interesting. It's a very interesting two parts of the reading. The suffering Christ, who is the sacrificed king, and then the Christ who is listening to prayer.
Yes, yes. And that one does not negate the other.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that comes to me is, what does it mean to be king? And the reading says the king suffers, the king listens, the king heals.
The king has authority.
Yeah.
An
Among
inner,
the living and the dead.
right. And that inner authority that is not subject to others.
Right. No matter what. Yeah.
It's a kind of a funny thing. I in college and undergrad, I trained to be a teacher. And when I was student teaching, I quickly learned the students listen if I believe in myself, if I have that inner authority. And there was another student teacher at the same time, and she was really struggling because she didn't have that.
Yeah.
That inner sense, like, yep, I belong here and you need to listen. But I think of that with Jesus here on the cross, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm dying on the cross, but I'm still in charge. I think it also is an encouragement to act with humility, because we have the rulers jeering and sneering. We have the soldiers jeering and sneering. We have one of the criminals who's on the cross jeering and sneering, but we need, where are the true followers? So for the Lucan community, okay, this is the path that we need to go for us. I can see you thinking.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm thinking, trying to think in a depth psychological way about Jesus's promise of paradise, and that when I move to that place of humility, that's what I find, right?
Yes.
I find paradise.
Yes.
As opposed to as you said, the sneering, this righteousness that is easy to fall into and goes to our earlier conversation of corruption and power. And the people that were crucifying Jesus had the power and they were corrupted by it. And there is no peace in that. There's just destruction.
Right, right. I love how you said that. When I take on that posture of humility and acknowledgement of myself, good, bad, and ugly, I do have paradise immediately, right? Jesus says today.
Right. And so I think I'm happy with our discussion today, because this reality of power and the archetype of the king, I think, invokes this conversation of what is it to have power and what happens when we do. And Jung said, where there is love, then there is no power drive. And where there is a power drive, there is no love. Like those two things are mutually exclusive. And yeah, I think I'm hearing that in this reading.
Yes, completely. And thus ends the liturgical year. The curtains have closed. We all applaud. Yay!
So next week is Advent?
Next week is Advent, which is the beginning of a new liturgical year. This, it's cycle C. So we've had Luke. Then we move to A, which is Matthew. So it'll have a very different feel next week.
I have to say that being able to lean into these ancient stories is a great gift, because I know that there's goodness in them. Even as I get troubled by them, I trust that there is so much holiness to them. that.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to have them as sort of the ground we can lean into.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, listeners, for sticking with us through this liturgical year and looking forward to another year with you. Do please take a moment and subscribe or like. Definitely share the podcast with those you may know and who might be enlivened by it. Blessings on you.